welcoming you back to the desk of Caddicarus. Join us as we partake into a new installment of Current Quickies.
Hello my duckies, and this time, in celebration of the 2013 upcoming Halloween, I'm going to be having a look at Amnesia, a machine for pigs. This game here isn't bad. Personally, I loved Amnesia The Dark Descent to absolute death, and after the many pant-pissing hours my friend and I put into finishing it, it quickly became one of my favourite horror games of all time. And then, all of a sudden, I heard rumours about a sequel shortly after we finished it. So, when the rumours then turned out to be true, and then I found out the game was being set in a late 19th century London, I was the most excited for a game sequel I had ever been in a long time. So once again, I buckled down with all of my friends, all in preparation to get the shit scared out of us all. But the question is, how was it then? Well...
This game was alright. Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs is just as dark and twisted as you could possibly imagine a game with that title to be. But if you were to assume that changing game developers from fictional games to the Chinese room would benefit the Amnesia series on all accounts, it isn't quite the case here. But anyway, let's start off with the good stuff. And first of all, one great thing about this game is the presentation. Both the visuals and sound design are massively polished to every last gruesome detail, and it really highlights the gritty and diseased industrial cityscape and the rusted factories of the last few centuries, which when combined all together truly sent shivers up my spine. I mean, the distant squeals of evil man-pig hybrids in the depths of a giant and grating machine is enough to scare me for sure. There are also some newly added outdoor areas to add to the uneasiness of the whole game, and not to mention the designs of these environments and enemies are shocking, revolting, and as well as incredibly fascinating. Talking about design, the entire mansion outdoor and machine sections of the story are widely scoped and, be them very memorable, fun enough to navigate through, and the puzzles are really satisfying to solve just to see how the whole clunking machine system works. And witnessing the wheels turning, steam shooting, and gears churning is really interesting and ungodly rewarding. The set pieces and enemies are also hideously demented and very creepy, still keeping the traditional Amnesia tinge to scare you rigid in some areas. The quality of the game never drops at any point and the controls are lovely and tight. And lastly, the best thing that this game has going for it is the story, and fuck me, the story is incredible. Not only does it require you to find all the diary entries and notes to further expand the narrative, but the whole concept and unfolding of the story is sickening, disturbing, startling, and more than that, infinitely interesting, and probably with some of the best writing I've ever had the immense pleasure of reading through and experiencing, and it adds a whole lot more depth to the universe of Amnesia and the possibilities that could unfold.
Now, despite all of that shit, there are a few things wrong with this game.
Where this game falls down on all aspects is, unfortunately, the gameplay. I'm not saying for a second that it's bad, but compared to The Dark Descent, the focus on providing raw fear through the game mechanics has been stripped down to mediocre levels. Just for example, you get an electric lantern similar to the oil lantern from the first, but this new lantern never runs out of juice, and not to mention, it never really gives your position away. Along with that, the sanity meter and sanity effects from staring at monsters or skulking around in pitch darkness have been completely removed. And so, with the everlasting safeness of the lantern added to the lack of sanity effects and true danger to taking everything too slowly, the whole game ends up being incredibly easy and not so tense as a result. Also, where the puzzles are satisfying to see being solved, apart from one or two exceptions, they aren't quite up to the level of the first one. And that's majorly because now there is no inventory screen and no huge amount of collectibles to mix with and discover, which actually isn't too much of a problem as the whole game is very linear. Unlike the first game where exploring and daring to venture into the creepiest of fog-infested rooms is rewarded or necessary, this game tends to take a more simple and forgiving approach by keeping all of the rooms and branching paths present, but instead not rewarding or requiring any serious exploration into the darker areas of the environments. Also, due to how memorable the paths of these areas actually are, there's no sense of overwhelming danger. Not to mention the danger and terror has also been dropped by the lack of enemies in the game, and where there are some perfectly placed and executed set pieces, the foreboding nature is quickly dropped when you realise you're never actually placed in any seriously harmful situations. And throughout the whole game, there are only 5 or 6 major chase sequences or stealthy enemy encounters, which, where they do get real scary sometimes, is nonetheless a huge shame. You'll also find that many scares of the game rely on you seeing a glimpse of one of the monsters from a distance or seeing a flock of them waiting for you, but like I said, they never actually get followed up, keeping the whole thing tense of course, but not actually pushing dread through my veins when I realise the formulaic and repetitive way that they are presented without actually continuing on with them. One last complaint I have with this is that some of the truly terrifying scenes of the release trailers never actually happen in the full game, which disappointed me slightly, but hey, they were teasers I suppose. But despite this game's flaws, the atmosphere is some of the best that I've ever played through, and as a sequel to The Dark Descent, even though it might not be perfect or up to spec, it's something definitely worth experiencing as a story itself with a few icky scares. Because of the flaws, the whole game almost feels like a properly executed interactive ghost train, allowing you to follow a very dead set of tracks with minimal danger and panic, but providing an excellent story to unfold yourself along the way, which in the long run is surprisingly worth it. And if you haven't played any of the Amnesia games, get them both right now and consider yourself completely spooked for this Halloween, or do you know what? Any night at all for that matter.
This game is awarded the commendable 7 out of 10.